in the 06010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus. It is a Sunday night or Monday whenever you're listening to this. Maybe Tuesday if you're listening on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. It is the end of Week 15 minus Monday Night Football, Phil Yates.
What a week it has been, by the way, Daniel.
I don't
Dopp.
even know
the
how to talk
NFL
about it.
delivered. We have had quite a day. If you love football or football, it has been epic. Epic today between the World Cup, which is just an amazing match between Argentina and of course, France. Goes in at penalty kicks. Mbappe, Messi, just at the top of their game. Ridiculous. And then the NFL, like 20 minutes before we got over here, had the play to end all ridiculous plays.
Oh my gosh.
What a day it was. Daniel will dive very much into it. And, of course, we have to start on Saturday because there were 3 games on Saturday. We got 2 days of action-packed football.
2 days of action-packed football, but 3 wonderful people here to be able to talk about it.
Heyo.
Well, 2 wonderful people plus me. Liz, so great to be able to have you
More than
join
wonderful.
us. Stop it.
What's above wonderful?
I love you. I don't know. Above average. Anyways, so Liz, don't worry about Field and I just over here brewing out with each other. So great to have you. And I want to talk about the Saturday games because I think it's going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, we should start with the Colts and I mean, I don't know how to say. I don't want to set you up for failure here, but let's start with the Colts and talk about Jonathan Taylor. Because
Liz, do you want to offer
injury.
some words of wisdom to those that may have started Jonathan Taylor and assure them that they did the right thing? We play a game of luck and chance.
That is exactly right. You did the right thing. Jonathan Taylor had been on the up since injuring his right ankle earlier in the season, and then guess which body part he injured and had to leave early. It was his right ankle. I'm sure Stefania will have plenty so we can dig into that situation. It is a sprain. At this time, current reporting suggests it's not, quote, too serious.
3 games left.
We're going to see. Right. We don't really know what the deal is going to be. I will say that next week, the Colts draw the Chargers, so that is theoretically a good matchup for whomever is in the backfield. And I know that Eric Moody is going to want to talk about that on Tuesday's waiver wire portion of the show as well. But for today's purposes, Deion Jackson available in 88% of leagues. Remember, he had quite a flash earlier in the season, largely a pass-catching back, but he did carry the ball 13 times for 55 rushing yards today, and he had that 1-yard touchdown catch. Also, all the Zach Moss truthers are having themselves a moment right now, right? There's still a few of them standing. Moss is 99% available in ESPN fantasy leagues, 24 carries, so clearly the preferred option on the ground for 81 yards, but of course, 0 catches. So there's not going to be a single back taking over Jonathan Taylor's role in this backfield were he to miss. It's going to be divvied up. Zach Moss, the option on the ground, short yardage, probably goal line, and then obviously Deion Jackson as the pass-catching option.
This game was just such a weird game. Just leading into it, it's sort of weird to talk about because the Colts dominated the entire first half.
33-0.
And then even with their domination, it really wasn't with their, I don't want to say it wasn't with their offense, but they didn't score a ton of offensive touchdowns.
No, they had one in the first half. They had a defensive and they had a punt return or a punt block return for a touchdown.
Yep.
This was the craziest game. Again, the last game that you and I saw before we came in to record this podcast was Patriots-Raiders. We'll get into that at some point, I am sure. But between the Colts blowing the biggest lead in NFL history,
right,
and then the Patriots executing the dumbest play in NFL history, it was a wild week. So really the point of this show, by the way, it's round 1 of the playoffs. This is a good, we'll talk more about the Colts backup running backs, but most of our content on Sundays during the season has been pushing things forward, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this happened. What does it mean going forward? In the playoffs, hey, if Justin Jefferson goes off, woohoo, great. It helps you along the way. It doesn't mean anything going forward for us. Justin Jefferson's going to be in my lineup again next week. No kidding. But this is a good example of one where it could mean something going forward because we are going to dive into the Zach Moss and Deion Jackson split for next week. Yeah. I'd be surprised if we saw Jonathan Taylor again this season. They've got 3 games left. The Colts are very much down and out of it. 4-9-1. They play the Chargers next Monday night. But Liz, Jonathan Taylor's teammate, Michael Pittman Jr., had a pretty savory matchup on Saturday, and I thought it was okay if you're playing PPR scoring.
Yo, it was gross. I get 10 catches out of 14 targets, but he averaged, if I said to you, Field, Daniel, whomever, oh, Michael Pittman's going to catch 10 balls, How many yards are you expecting him to record? Probably more than 60?
140. Yeah, so
that's disgusting.
125 sound like a
Right?
reasonable estimate?
Sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
He averaged 6 yards per reception, and this is not an outlier. Like, Michael Pittman Jr. entered this game averaging 9 targets a game. We knew he was a target hog. He's far and away the Colts' #1 wide receiver. His ADOT has also been down 26% this season. Thanks, Matt Ryan. And now this is what we're looking at. We're looking at him. I mean, this is like a YPR equivalent to Jamison Crowder's. This is absolutely disgusting, especially for a player who is so incredible, runs like his daddy, who was a former NFL running back, frankly, after the catch.
Wow. Look at that pull.
But he still managed 19 fantasy points. So if you play in PPR scoring, you're like, I'm okay with it. We talked about it being a good
much
matchup.
volume.
It didn't end up being a good matchup for the reasons we thought it would be, like a ton of yards, but 10 catches, hard to get mad at. Other side of the game, Justin Jefferson. If you have him,
do I keep starting him?
Yeah, I think you should. He was the 7th most popular player on playoff rosters. He was on a playoff roster in nearly 62% of leagues. And what did he do? 30.3 fantasy points. And it was a quiet first half, too.
Yeah.
If you weren't like out with your family, maybe decorating your Christmas tree, and you missed the first half, you were locked in. You were like, geez, Justin Jefferson had like 3 catches for 37 yards in the first half. What the heck, man?
He got banged up, too, because he was forced to go out
the
on
game
a play.
for a minute. It was a chest injury, I believe what they called it. Quickly returned to the game and then quickly mashed. So Justin Jefferson absolutely crushed, 12 for 123 and a touchdown. He rules. So does teammate Dalvin Cook, who had 17 carries, 95 yards, and he had 4 catches. This was the good part. 95 yards for Dalvin Cook. A long screen pass for a touchdown. He ends up with 27 fantasy points. He lost a fumble, by the way, so it could have been an even bigger day. And we talked about Cook going into last week's game against the Lions when you warned us, like, are you sure about Dalvin Cook? And the positive spin was that, like, he keeps getting touches, and that has been the case, as Dalvin Cook remains one of the great workhorses in the NFL right now. 21.3 touches over his past 4 games. Cook, of course, locked in. They play host to the Giants next week, do the Vikings.
I loved the fact in one of my best ball leagues, I've got Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne double stack that worked out really well for me this week. So
Wow.
These Vikings, in spite of playing a really awful first half, if you just look at the box score, you're like, this was great. This was fantastic. Let's hope we get some more of this going forward.
And Daniel, on the other side, so if you had Justin Jefferson, he like carried you through your round 1 of the playoffs. If you have Stephon Diggs, who was the 9th most popular player in terms of playoff leagues, or playoff rosters, the opposite. Hopefully you had to survive Stephon Diggs on Saturday night.
And here's the thing, like the Bills offense ran through running backs and tight ends for whatever reason. Josh Allen threw 4 touchdowns and had over 300 passing yards. And he threw 2 of them to tight ends, 2 of them to running backs.
Yeah.
It was just one of those days where they were finding what was working for them, unfortunately. Not that Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs weren't involved. You're just going to have to, this is one of those things you got to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, you're always starting Stephon Diggs. I don't care if I told you, I don't know, like unless he had his foot amputated, you're probably playing Stephon Diggs. But he also got 9 targets. So what are you going to do?
What are you going to do there?
Meanwhile, if you rolled the dice for some reason on Dawson Knox, you did get richly rewarded.
Can I quickly say that in that league that I have the KJ Osborne and Justin Jefferson, Dawson Knox is one of my tight ends.
Wow, okay, so your best ball team had a lot.
So that one was doing pretty well. 6 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown, 21.8 fantasy points. Here's the question, Field. Like, the tight end position is so bad. It's so tough for us to be able to figure out who we're going to be using. I don't know as though I have Dawson Knox anything more than a tight end 10 to tight end 14 most any given weeks. We've seen what he is. This is part of the big play upside that can happen when you play in a Bills offense with Josh Allen.
I mean, we're at the point now where we don't even have to describe it. They're just this group of tight ends that can be decent in a week and they can be absolutely awful in a week. Look at the past 5 games for Dawson Knox. That's what we're talking about. This was the best one for sure. He's had 3 good games, 2 dud games. You decide how lucky you feel when you play Dawson Knox. But when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback, I'd prefer that as opposed to a tight end who plays with a not good quarterback.
Are we in that same spot with Mark Andrews, Liz, where it's a little bit of a...
Liz, what are you feeling right now if you're somebody that rosters Mark Andrews? Like, what is going through your brain?
Well, you're not alone because he's on 53% of playoff rosters. So the majority have him, which I think is also kind of a reflection of just how muddy the position has been, right? You made it to the playoffs. More than 50% of people who drafted him made it to the playoffs. He also led the Ravens receiving group in this game. 7 targets, only 3 catches for 31 yards. But we knew this was a low volume passing offense. I don't think we expected it to be this low volume. He hasn't scored since week 6, right? Like, I think that's been the major bummer. 3 straight games under 10 fantasy points, but he has over 6 targets in all 5 games since the week 10 bye. And this coming week, he gets the Falcons, who just gave up 2 touchdowns to Juwan Johnson. So you're not going to sit him. Like, this is what maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't. I hope you crafted a roster around that sort of lack of stability.
I'll just say that. So, Liz, totally agree everything you said. Like, you're going to start Mark Andrews next week. Really, though, this is just about the idea that you came into the season and thought this guy could be the most valuable tight end in fantasy.
Yep.
And by the way, early on in the season, he was crushing it. Since then, not crushing it.
Those first couple
not
of
even
Lamar
close.
weeks were great.
They were great. And unfortunately, Mark Andrews has turned into like one of those other tight ends of late. That's just the reality of how it's been. So it's been super disappointing. Those kind of performances, when stacked with others, can be the differences between advancing and not advancing in the playoffs. Hopefully you have survived this stretch for Mark Andrews. Is it going to get better? Liz did mention a good matchup. The problem is just like, it's not like you said bad matchups of late.
Yeah, but
They have no one to throw it to, and they just can't throw the ball. The Ravens are a miracle to be at 9-5.
they 100% are a miracle.
Like, they're just scraping by because they keep. I mean, listen, you are what your record says you are, right? But like, it ain't exactly style points that they win with, right? And I'm not sure it's going to be that way going forward. If they do beat Atlanta this upcoming Saturday, it probably will be a grinded out game, much more than a 34-28 passing attack.
Probably going to have to do a lot of adult beverages during that game field. I think that would be a good one.
That would be a good one, Daniel. Good thought. What kind would you have?
I think if I was going to choose, I'd probably choose a Miller Lite, I believe.
You want to do that one first then?
Yeah, 'tis the season to get together with good friends and great drinks, and that means 'tis Miller time. Sure, the holidays can be stressful, almost as stressful as a December fantasy matchup, but all the more reason to raise a glass or a can to keeping things uncomplicated. Since 1975, Miller Lite has been the beer with taste you can depend on. No games, no gimmicks, just great beer. Not only is Miller Lite a great tasting light beer, it's also a great gift for the beer lovers in your life. And for even more gift ideas, perfect for beer lovers, visit the Miller Lite shop at shop.millerlite.com. Their new holiday collection features everything from cozy beer-inspired holiday sweaters to drinkable ornaments for your tree this holiday. 'Tis Miller time, so enjoy Miller time with friends and family. Miller Lite, great taste, 96 calories. So go to millerlite.com/FFF to find delivery options near you so you can give the gift of Miller time this holiday season, or you can pick up some Miller time pretty much anywhere they sell beer. 'Tis Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Milwaukee Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
Yep.
Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
All right, Liz, when we started the show, I asked you to talk about the Saturday games. I now want to talk about the Sunday games, and now I want to give you something way more exciting to talk about with the Jacksonville Jaguars, as both Trevor Lawrence and Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, everybody was just awesome. I just want to hand it over to you to talk about the Jaguars.
Well, the first thing I thought was, woo, Trevor Lawrence's ADP is skyrocketing heading into next season, especially given how crazy the position has been, how many injuries there has been. 318 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 via the air, 1 on the ground, plus 31 rushing yards. He has now gone over 20 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. He's managed 3 touchdowns through the air in 3 of his last 4 since the bye. Over 2 points. I love this extra. This is like a bonus. 2 points as a runner in 8 of his last 10 games. He's got a tough matchup against the Jets, but also it's not like the Cowboys have been a pushover. I think we are starting to see some of that generational talent that was expected out of Lawrence flashing down the stretch of 2022.
Well, and part of that is because he has such great pass catchers around him, and he's got people to be able to give the ball to. Travis Etienne was great. Zay Jones looked fantastic. Zay Jones far and away was number 1, but Marvin Jones got involved. He's got a bunch of people to be able to trust. So
wait, hold on. Liz was talking about next year's ADP. I heard that they traded for Calvin Ridley.
I saw that.
Oh, God, that's right.
Remember?
Calvin Ridley in the mix next year as well. This Jaguars offense is going to be so fun. And in a class where there are still some questions about the 2021 draft class of quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence has established himself as that dude, looking like the player he was coming out of Clemson, who we thought could be a franchise-altering player. He's starting to look like that. That much is for sure. And Zay Jones, God bless you. 6 catches for 3 touchdowns.
I know, right? Well, on Fantasy Football Now this morning, we got a question that said, hey, Mike Clay, would you rather start Zay Jones or Christian Watson?
Well, it's not done yet.
Christian Watson is going to have to come up with 35 fantasy points
Yeah,
in order
but
to
Mike,
beat
we
that
talked
one.
about this. Mike was on the Zay thing, wasn't he?
Yo, he was very much on
he
the
was
Zay
on
Jones
Zay.
because
I
of the
like
volume.
to chase the volume, right?
Yes, that
and
is-
he was rewarded for that.
100%.
Speaking, hey, Daniel, volume. I wouldn't expect
Speaking
that
of-
you were going to be chasing this volume 3 weeks ago, but Jerick McKinnon's getting crazy volume for the Chiefs right now, and I feel like being the best running back in fantasy in back-to-back weeks is good.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's coming at a time when you could really use it. We've been talking about both of these running backs being able to be useful this week because of the fact that they're playing the Texans, but we're talking about, hey, Isaiah Pacheco is going to get a ton of running games, a ton of usage on the ground. But the last couple of weeks, it has been Jerick McKinnon getting more and more usage. 13 opportunities last week, 18 this week. He has a touchdown catch in 3 straight games, 14 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games.
Wow.
He is getting utilized in a massive way within this offense. And as long as he keeps doing this, Field, you know, how is it that you take the pass-catching offense or running back in a Patrick Mahomes-led offense and say he's not at least a minimum a flex play for me?
Can't do it, Daniel. You absolutely have to play him right now.
You have
he's
to
just
play
been
him.
so good, and this part of this is the momentum, right? I mean, back-to-back weeks is being RB1.
Yep.
By the way, I think he was available in some of these on waivers this week
crazy.
too. Was Jerick McKinnon? So a good matchup on paper that the Chiefs actually didn't necessarily mash. I mean, they had to win this game in overtime. Shout out to the Texans, back-to-back really gritty efforts against the Chiefs, and last week the Cowboys as well. But McKinnon has just been awesome. The catches are just ridiculous right now, and you know the Chiefs still not getting a ton from a receiver not named Juju Smith-Schuster. He had 10 catches today, but Kadarius Toney hardly played. Another quiet day for Marquez Valdez-Scantling other than the touchdown
that
catch.
one,
Sky
yeah.
Moore is really just like he's out there more as an accessory than he is a big part of the offense right now. So Jerick McKinnon has a lot of value.
Yep.
So there is only one thing wrong with the Eagles.
Oh,
One thing.
Okay.
They're now 13-1. That's good, right?
Is it that one? Is that the one thing that's wrong?
No, I'll give him a pass on
Okay,
that.
all right, that's fair.
Here's one thing wrong with them. If you play into week 18, there's a chance the Eagles might not have their regular starters
yeah.
out there very much because they're 13-1, Daniel. They had really as much as they can handle from the Bears today, but they still find a way to win. And the thing about the Eagles that's beautiful is that most of their stars today played like stars. Jalen Hurts was absurd on a day in which he had 2 interceptions and I believe 0 passing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts still managed 34.7 fantasy points. Think about that. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. He threw for 315 passing yards. He had 61 rush yards. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, did Jalen Hurts. I mean, he is just clicking at a high cylinder. He was the player that was on a playoff roster in 65.4% of leagues. That's the 3rd highest rate in the entire on ESPN.com this year.
That's crazy.
Just ridiculous. And part of why it's ridiculous is he has just an absurd duo of wide
An
receivers
abundant
right now.
of riches there because it's not just A.J. Brown who had 8 for 191 or something like
Yeah,
that.
9 for 181.
9
so
for
close,
181.
Yeah. 27.1 fantasy points. He's got 3 games with 150 plus yards this season. The beauty of A.J. Brown is that, remember, coming into this year, we were wondering, is he going to see that much more volume than he did in Tennessee? The answer is, yeah, he sees a ton of volume basically every week. The upside's tremendous. Jalen Hurts has been one of the best downfield throwers all season. And then beyond that, he stayed healthy. Remember, in Tennessee, there were a lot of times where it was like iffy to practice or not. He's been healthy all year for Philadelphia. Looks like a whole new player, which is saying something because they got him for a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Devontae Smith, meanwhile, it's just like every week I'm like, holy crap, I forgot that guy's their number 2 wide receiver.
And it doesn't even feel like it's a number 2 he's still getting a ton of volume as well. It really is. Which one of them is the defense going to leave open?
8 targets. And last month we talked about, it was like, man, like, what do you do with Devontae Smith? Like, it's been a lot of up and down, up and down, and up and down. Well, 3 straight games with at least 17 fantasy points for Devontae Smith, who had 17.6 today. Just been ridiculous. And I think we're at the point now where, again, momentum carries players into lineups. That's where Devontae Smith will be.
Oof.
Not everybody could ball up, though, Daniel, as Miles Sanders did have a very, very, very tough day.
Yeah, and this is one of those things when you talk about momentum carries people into lineups. Like, Miles Sanders has had an up and down type of season with his usage, right?
Yeah.
He gets a couple of games where he'll get a handful of touchdowns, gets a ton of volume, but then there are a few games where he sort of gets vultured in this offense, in part because that's what happens when you're the lead running back. behind a Jalen Hurts-led offense where Jalen Hurts had multiple rushing touchdowns this week. So what are you going to do here? 11 carries for 42 yards, only one catch for negative 13 yards. That negative 13 yards, if that's accurate, that is not what it is that you are looking for. But this is part of it. If he doesn't get in the end zone, he doesn't offer a ton of passing game work. And so when the Eagles have ways to get in the end zone that aren't Miles Sanders, you have these down weeks every once in a while.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with Miles Sanders is, obviously like the fumbles, all the mistake stuff is like not ideal. But just the lack of passing game usage, it just turns him into like, if he doesn't score a touchdown, then it's going to be a little bit of a problem for Miles Sanders. But still, I got to be honest with you, like, he'll be right back inside my top 15 for running backs this upcoming week. He's still like top 5 in the NFL in rushing and top 5 in the NFL in rushing touchdowns as well. Like,
this team is inside the 5-yard line so often.
Yeah, they're scoring so many touchdowns. This is definitely the outlier and not a start of a trend for Miles Sanders in my estimation.
I do want to continue to see what's going to happen with Dallas Goedert as he did not come back and play this week.
Yeah, I get the sense he'll be active next Saturday against the Cowboys, which might actually be the toughest defense the Eagles will play at any point this season.
Ooh. All right, we're going to pay some bills one more time here, Field.
Yeah, that's right. Well, college football bowl season is here, Daniel, and Dr. Pepper and the residents of Fansville invite you to revel in another one-of-a-kind year, flexing your foam finger, humming your school's fight song in your sleep, and thriving on a steady diet of buffalo chicken dip and post-game day commentary, all washed down with a rich, delicious Dr. Pepper, of course. Another game is always just around the corner, so make sure your tailgate doesn't turn into a failgate. Pick up a case of ice-cold Dr. Pepper, the one fans deserve.
Lions, Tigers, and tailgates. Oh my, the college football season is always a great time of year. Besides the jerseys, the face paint, and the foam fingers, there's the food. And nothing gets you more fired up for game day than Eckrich smoked sausage. They're naturally hardwood smoked and have the perfect blend of spices. From buffalo sausage dip to sausage, chili, mac and cheese, Eckrich smoked sausage is a quick way to bring flavor to all your tailgate meals. Visit Eckrich.com for easy, one-of-a-kind sausage recipes. Eckrich, you do you. All right, let's talk about a couple of running backs here as Latavius Murray continues to be able to be useful to fantasy managers even as we enter the fantasy playoffs, Liz Loza.
Who was this guy that was out there for the Broncos? Who was that?
That was Latavius Murray. Here's what happens when you remove Russell Wilson from the offense. Now it's very clear that the Broncos should just lean on the run. They probably should have been doing it more, but we had to deal with the Wilson piece of it and all of the money that was invested in him. Now you can just let Latavius Murray, who, by the way, has to be one of the most incredible locker room characters, right? Considering he always ends up on some squad and then he always ends up carrying this 20-plus load down the stretch. He's such a stretch run hero for fantasy managers and for teams. 24 carries, 130 yards, a touchdown. I just want to say that again. 24 carries and 130 yards and a touchdown on a Broncos offense. That does not seem projectable. Here's my issue with him. Only one catch off of one target for 12 yards. I'd like to see him more involved in the receiving game, particularly because we know that that is available to him in his skill set. This was far and away his best game of the season. He is clearly, after all of the injuries and waiving of players, the lone running back in this backfield. Marlon Mack did look good. The run game did look good. And I think that probably the Broncos are going to lean more heavily on that moving forward. They've got the Rams, then they're at Kansas City. They finish things up against the Chargers. At least that last one is a good matchup. Who knows how Kansas City will project, what game flow will look like there. But I think right now, if we're talking about momentum carrying players, over 20 touches in 3 of his past games, if over 20 touches in 3 of his past 5 games, then the momentum volume-wise is leaning towards Murray. He's going to be, a low-end RB2 flex every week?
Yeah, I just hope that this wasn't the only upside play he has of the playoffs, right? Because he had been a low upside player prior to this, right? It had been a lot of 19 carries for 57 rushing yards, which is not ideal, but he balled out today. Have to give him a ton of credit, and the volume is just ridiculous, as Liz mentioned. It also helped that they were in a game in which they could run it a ton. They play the Rams next Sunday.
I was just going to say that.
On Christmas, so they probably can run the ball quite a bit as well. Liz, he was good. Not quite as good, though, as Rhamondre Stevenson, and I wasn't sure Rhamondre Stevenson was going to play this morning when I woke up. He played and played very well.
I mean, I think he's healthy, guys. Yeah. I think we can feel comfortable
bed, right?
with him leading this offense. He, by the way, is the 9th most popular player on playoff rosters, rostered on over 50% of ESPN leagues. He's had 15 carries or 6 catches in 9 of his last 10 games. This week he had 19 carries. That was his most since week 5 at Detroit. Ripped off a gorgeous 30-plus yard run that was key to the Patriots. I don't want to say it was key to the Patriots' victory because that losing Las Vegas lateral certainly had a lot to do with the victory.
That was weird.
I mean, the triple L. Like, I'm a double L. That was a triple L, but it did not work out well for Sin City.
Man, I have no words. Sure, I do have words. I'm sure people have seen it by now. It's not like we're going to be describing a play you haven't seen. Jacoby Meyer's brain was telling him that his team was down and needed a touchdown on that play. That's the only explanation for it. He took ownership of it. He was like, I need a touchdown or else the game is over. We're down by 4 or more.
Yep.
And his brain, that's a massive malfunction. I don't know why Rhamondre Stevenson pitched it to him in the first place. It's just what is mind-blowing about the Patriots, especially of late, but for a good portion of this season, is that for a team for 20 years has been better than everybody else at knowing what the situation was, what to do, how to execute the small things that amounted to big things in aggregate. They haven't been doing that this year. And nothing more embarrassing than what they did on Sunday, this play that will maybe define. I mean, they probably are out of the playoffs. I mean, they're now no longer in the top 7, and one win could end up being the difference between making or missing the playoffs. And, those are the kind of things that just they stack up for a team that is not a winning football team right now. A wow moment. Just a wow moment. But I will say, last thing on Rhamondre.
Yeah.
What's crazy is that for as awesome as he's been as a pass catcher, and you're like, damn, like Rhamondre can have like 12 targets in a game and just mash. Like, he had negative receiving yards today and absolutely mashed. Like, I think Rhamondre's a better runner than he is a receiver. Like, he's just crazy good. Crazy, crazy good. You know who else is good, Daniel?
Who else is good?
Justin Herbert, but it didn't feel that way today, right?
If you won your fantasy matchup this week, it was in spite of starting Justin Herbert here this
crazy.
week. And that's tough because we walked into this matchup thinking, like, this is going to be a great game against the Titans. He's got everybody back. Keenan Allen.
13 passing yards. You're like, sweet, sign me up.
That's amazing. If you knew he was going to throw for 42 times and 300 passing yards, but doesn't get in the end zone, doesn't run in the end zone, doesn't throw in the end zone, he just has 2 interceptions. This entire offense outside of Austin Eckler, who just continues to be phenomenal. Why did we not draft Austin Eckler 1.01?
We should have.
Year?
Well, Liz did. You know what's weird, though? Eckler had a weird game. Not a monster game for Eckler. He left at one point, went to the medical tent. No injury to be announced, but a quieter Austin Eckler day, especially as a receiver, than we were accustomed to.
But he still gets in the end zone, though.
Oh, I mean, he's still mashed because he's Austin Eckler.
Because he's Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Is this is one of those things. If you started Justin Herbert, you're going to start him again next week, regardless. Against an Indy defense, like I think if you have everybody that is healthy here, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, I think more often than not, we're going to see a better offense than what we saw here.
They just got to finish better in the red zone. I think they will going forward.
Well, they're not the only team that needs to finish better, as the Raiders just got bailed out this week.
Oh, no, Daniel, they finished impeccably. They had the greatest finish ever on Sunday.
I guess their defense had a great finish, yes.
No, I just, if you have, this has been a tough one. If you have Devontae Adams, you may have limped in last week if you needed to win to get in. And if you have him, he's awesome. But he didn't win in your matchup today. 8 targets for Devontae Adams, 4 catches for 28 yards. The Patriots were without multiple cornerbacks as well. Like, I don't know what to say about this one. I mean, the Raiders' offense, very much not good today. I can certainly say that. But yeah, I don't have an explanation for this one. I don't have an explanation for Devontae Adams being as quiet as he has been. He's been, like, streaky is too strong of a word because he's just been so ridiculous for so much of the year, right? But he's had a couple of small ruts this season, and none less opportunely timed than this one right now, Liz.
I think the thing about this week that stuck out to me, though, was now that Darren Waller is back, there seemed to be some miscommunication issues. There was not the seamlessness, the connection, the Fresno State connection, if you still want to lean into that, between Carr and Adams. There was that one play that there was a massive miscommunication on. So I am wondering if there's just kind of a regrouping that needs to happen. It'll get ironed out in practice. It's not that Devontae Adams hasn't been up and down, but I think that new inclusion of Waller, who's such a big presence on the team, maybe messed with the energy a little bit. And when you look at next week's matchup against the Steelers and you know how much they give up to perimeter receivers and you know that that's where Devontae Adams absolutely beasts, I'm a little less nervous, assuming, obviously, I advanced to next week and that this performance didn't cost me.
Yes, hopefully you didn't have both Justin Herbert and Devontae Adams, because then you would have a really awesome team that just sort of underperformed this week.
We were talking about this as we wrapped up the show. We were talking about this in the war room before we came in. Our producer Dave Presley said, like, we were debating, would you rather not make the playoffs or make the playoffs and lose either in heartbreaking fashion / like put up just the most embarrassing lineup of all time? If you're out there and you made the playoffs, but your team today performed like a team that was tanking for Victor Wembanyama, screenshot, send it our way. If it's cathartic for you, if it's not, it's okay. Bury your head in the sand. Maybe we'll never talk to you for the rest of the season. I get it. It's okay. Totally not at all offended. But I had a team that seriously got woodshedded today, if that's a word. I made it up if it's not.
I think it is.
Yeah. All right. It got woodshedded today. We don't talk about that team anymore. I don't even remember joining that league. If you're like me and you have one of those, let me know. We're here for you. We are here for you. That's all I can say.
It's crazy to feel like we're already at this point in the season where we're through the first, or almost through the first week of the playoffs. We have one more game left, which is Monday Night Football, to be able to see how that works out. But we're heading into week 16. Things are going to, like, field. This is going to be a lot of fun. Also, programming update for us here over the next couple of weeks.
You want to rip through what we got going on?
Why don't you do it? You're better at it than I am.
Okay, so if you're listening right now, this is Week 15 wrap-up show. 4 shows this week, Tuesday through Friday, like we always do. Fantasy Football Now is Saturday this week because all the games are on Saturday, Christmas Eve, just 3 games on Sunday. But the first time we have 3 games on Christmas ever in the NFL.
That's exciting.
Moving forward, beyond that, we'll take a few days off for the Christmas holiday. We've got Monday and Tuesday off. We'll be back Wednesday. So rather than hearing from us after the games on Saturday and Sunday, you'll hear from us Wednesday. We hope you can be appreciative and show some grace because of the holiday schedule. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week, and then we'll reduce down to what we will call sort of our off-season schedule. 1-2 shows during the week. You'll get some DFS during the playoffs, plus some other stuff.
Yep.
And we're looking for ideas. If you have an idea of what you want us to talk about during the offseason, if you want to talk about your 5 free agents you want to see change teams, if you want to talk about your 5 favorite things that Daniel said this season, if you want to talk about 5 of Liz's best takes, let us know. Give us topics. We'll be appreciative.
I want to talk about the 5 players that you unlocked this week, and I want to apologize because even though Deontay Johnson didn't get in the end zone, he had a pretty great week.
I still have draw him. Yeah, he actually was pretty good. 10 catches for 98 yards.
Yeah, like,
we're getting closer. I got to keep drawing him.
That's right.
But did we unlock? No, Mike Evans was better today. Chris Godwin scored a touchdown.
You got in the end zone. You needed that.
We're crashing.
That's going to be tough. We're going to keep doing this more next week. All right. That's going to do it for us today. If you're listening to the audio portion, then the Sunday Night Football recap is coming up. If not, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We love you guys. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself.
Go Greg
We'll see you on Tuesday for Waiver Wires.
Viva Messi!
Viva!